I'm Maria Tsennykh, and welcome to Catching Fraud and Valuation Miscalculation, where finance meets fraud prevention. I'm here to share the art and science behind fraud prevention, forensic accounting, and valuation, giving you innovative strategies to outsmart financial crime, manage risk effectively, and maximize your value ethically. Hello, my name is Maria Tsennykh. I'm a founder and managing partner of TSENU Consulting. And today I'm bringing Yulia Maksimenko, who has more than 20 years experience in fraud prevention and detection, and with whom I worked at prior employer for more than 4 years together. And we will be speaking today about the what business owners should do to prevent fraud. And Yulia Maksimenko is also principal at TSENU Consulting recently. Yulia, so imagine that I am a business owner. I run a liquor store. Let's imagine that's behind me, a liquor store, or I run some office space, whatever it is. What is a business owner should I be first thinking about how to actually protect myself, protect my business, protect my assets to potentially prevent and detect fraud?
Sure. So first of all, you should recognize that there is a risk of fraud. There are so many people who completely ignore this problem. And I saw so many cases when we investigated in a company and the company owner or a company general manager would say, "Oh, I'm so shocked. Like, I never thought that it would happen to me." Because people read about it in newspapers. They read about big cases and they think, well, that would never happen to me because I'm a small business or I'm a mid-sized business. But it's not true. Like, risk of fraud is inevitable for all companies, no matter how big or small they are. And also, if you look at the statistics, and there are different surveys that big companies, consulting companies are doing, about 50 to 80% of companies report that they were victims of fraud within the last year or two. And it's only the fraud.
How many? I apologize. How many was the percentage?
Between 50 and 80%, depending on the industry and the size of the company. But what we should remember here, it's only the fraud which was detected and reported. There are so many cases which go unrevealed, and on average, it's about like 12 to 18 months when it was not revealed at all. Sometimes it's like years and years. And secondly, we should remember that's it's quite a significant amount. So again, on average, I think it was one of the surveys ACFE did, Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. They said that on average, 5% of revenue of a company is stolen through the fraud. On average.
And we're speaking about like which region? Like specifically the US, or
it's
like
about the US. I think it was the global survey, but I think they focused on the USA. So it can be 5%, it can be 50%. You never know until you actually reveal it. The only reason why I am giving you the scary numbers is for you to recognize it's a real risk, and it's happening. And it's happening now, and like to the majority of companies are suffering from that. It's just a question whether it's something small, like your employees, I don't know, stealing pens from you, or is it something more major and people are, channeling part of the revenue to their pockets, or stealing money through the procurement schemes.
So number one is just to accept the fact that fraud is potentially there, and just be just the acceptance of that not to kind of like overthink that, oh, it will never happen with me.
Exactly.
There's a very high chance that I actually have someone stealing my pens or somebody doing something behind my back that I'm not aware of. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yes, first of all, to recognize that it's there and it's happening, and it might be closer than you think. And it's up to you how I totally get it. Business owners have so many tasks on their plate. They need to think about clients, they need to think about profitability, they need to think about market share, they need to think about economic conditions. They have so many things to think about. So fraud very often goes to the end of the list. That's why I'm saying that you need to bring it closer to the top list and pay attention to it and prioritize. You cannot pay attention to every single item in your possession and every single asset. You need to think, what is the most valuable asset in your company? For pharma company, it might be inventory. For, I don't know, bank, it might be loan portfolio. For your shop that you just referred to, it might be, again, inventory. For a consulting firm, it might be client base, database, or it might be like people who are performing the services. So depending on the company, you need to think, what is your most valuable asset, and build the fraud risk controls around that asset mostly. If you have
so just going very creative and going very, brainstorming at the moment, that's exactly the situation in my case, thinking like that if it's a liquor store, if it's like the space that I run as an office space, then I should be kind of focusing mostly on that main priority asset, that it will be, if it's a space, then it's just basically what kind of space related issues and assets, potential fraud situations can happen. Just thinking through those absolutely fantastic situations that probably nobody thinks about it, but actually they can happen, right? And the same with liquor situation. If somebody just basically drinks half of the liquor tomorrow, right, and I'm not aware of, and then they just pull some water in, and just I don't know, it's just top of my head, right? But it can happen, right?
Totally. Just look at your balance sheet. Identify the things that are most valuable to you. Sometimes it's even intangible. Sometimes it's reputation. If you decide that it's reputation, concentrate on that. But do think about it. Do use your professional skepticism, and don't completely ignore this thing, because it might be nothing, but at some point of time, frauds did completely destroy big companies. They might destroy your smaller or medium-sized company if you completely ignore it and if you don't pay attention to certain things.
And it's reputational, right? So if there's one bottle out of every single bottle available, and even if that's the cheapest liquor available in the store, if it's just melted with, I don't know, let's imagine crazy situation with water, and then tomorrow somebody drinks and talks about that. That might be, again, in terms of the actual revenue situation, it won't really affect, right? Well, one customer won't pay for things, right? But the reputational risk that will be damaged because of that little issue, right? So,
absolutely. Yeah, totally. And it also will influence the whole team. If the team would find out that something like this is happening, people might think that they can also do similar things to your bar. But yeah, like just think about it. First of all, just bring it to your attention. Think, skeptically and logically what you could do about it, and what you would concentrate on first of all.
And just one little remark here. Remember, we spoke one time about those broken windows, right? So once you break one window, and then it feels, well, it's just one window is broken, right? But actually invites some potential fraudsters to continue, right? So when it looks broken, then it could be, like kind of open up. What do you think? Like just a few words about that, broken windows situation that you mentioned, I think about like a month ago that we spoke.
So yeah, for those who's not familiar with the concept, I think it was New York Metro, where it was like a lot of criminal offense happening, and the new mayor decided to deal with that. So what he started with is he asked to clean the trains actually, and to make all the windows intact because they were broken before. And he was doing it every night. So every night they were broken, and he did it again and again. And then eventually it helped with the overall atmosphere and overall, statistics of crime. Because when you're in a nice environment, you'll think twice before you will do some, illegal or like something that will bring a negative attention to you. The same in companies. If in company there is an environment inviting people to do so, or people see that somebody is doing a fraud or misconduct, and there is no punishment, no consequences of this behavior, they would think, okay, why I wouldn't do that? And I think I would come to that point later in our conversation when we speak about people, because it's also like very psychological type of aspect, and it's really interesting how people can adjust to the environment and to the situation. And that's another thing that we, like, as
I just
business
like it so much, right? It's just that psychological issue that you will bring later on, but it's just to stress on that. There's sometimes simple things, they matter so much. Okay, me being back to very much the owner, not the forensic accountant. So
okay, yes, no, totally. Then another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention as the business owner is that you need to focus on selecting the right people. And it's both selecting the right people for your specific business. So a lot of people, when they hire new employees, they look at their professional qualities, and they sometimes ignore the psychological, portrait of a person or the background check. There is a like kind of statistics. Again, I won't give you exact source of that, but there is a statistics, psychological statistics, that the whole population can be divided in three groups. And one of the group is, let's say, 10% of people would never do any misconduct or commit crime. It's just against their nature. It's against their religion. It's against how they were brought up, or they're just too scared to do something that is prohibited. In any case, they would never, ever do anything that is against the rules. And of course, we all want to have these people on board. And how do you select them? Through like different ways. Like you do look at their background, you speak to their previous companies, you speak to their former colleagues, etc., etc. But you need to pay attention to their background, and you need to understand what person you are hiring, because there is also 80% of people who would do a fraud or commit a fraud or do something prohibited in certain circumstances. And again, let's speak about it a little bit later when we speak about internal controls. But depending on the situation, the person might think, okay, just this time, in this particular situation, let me do this because it looks like everybody is doing it, or I'm in a difficult, life situation, so I'll do that. And if you don't have proper internal controls around these assets that we were talking about, it might happen as well. And there is finally 10% of people who would misbehave, let's put it this way, no matter what. We know about, like, I don't know, Winona Ryder, a very famous, actor who would steal, who would shoplift. Does she need it? No, but she needed this adrenaline. She needed this drive. She needed that in her life. She couldn't help doing that. And similarly, in other situations, there are 10% of population who would come to your company, and no matter what, they would be the rebels. And sometimes it's good to have rebels in your company because they bring new blood and they, say, oh no, this is how we do the business normally, but I suggest something new, which is great. But sometimes these people will be disruptive, and sometimes those people would commit a fraud or take away your assets just because, why not? It's fun to them. They want this drive. They want this, risk in their life.
So just to stress on that, basically shoplifting for that 10% of population, or whatever it is percentage wise, like we're not here like to, specifically like highlight the exact percentage, but there is a portion of the population who really enjoys doing something for the just adrenaline and drive. And the corporate environment can be very inviting as well for the same. That's just kind of like to stress and understand. And again, even being in the industry for 20 years, it is still shocking and surprising, right? We kind of assume that most of the times, most people will be that 10%, the first 10% that you mentioned will be 99%. But just to stress, that's actually not how the world works. So
yes, but also you can do something about it. You cannot do anything with 80% of people who might or might not do something, but you can actually try and figure out those bad 10%, if you wish. You can do your homework. You can do due diligence. Very often when you hire people, you ask for references. How often do people actually call those previous employees? Because very often they just take the names, they just, okay, it looks like this person actually worked there, but not necessarily call and talk to those previous employers to figure out what happened, why this person left, was he or she fired because of certain misconduct. Very often companies prefer to just get rid of people who were fraudsters to avoid publicity and also to avoid costs associated with investigation of fraud. So they just say, okay, we feel like you're not good fit for our company. You did this, this, and that. We just ask you kindly to leave. And there won't be any criminal record if you just run the usual due diligence report. What can happen? Like if you speak to the people who worked in that previous company, they might be willing to tell you, you know what, actually there was something happening with this person. I've heard some rumors, or I know for sure that this person, I don't know, did some this and that, and that's why he or she was fired. And then you would take the informative decision. You would say, okay, I actually don't want this person to work for me because of that history. I'll give you an example. I don't want to name the names.
It's just an example. Yeah.
Yeah, although it's a public information, but I was involved in an investigation where the whole management team committed like a huge fraud. They stole like millions of dollars from their company. And when we tried to dig out like what was happening and what is the history of those people, and again, I'm speaking about top people like CFO, CEO, this whole management, we found out some common about them. They all came from the previous company, which was bankrupt. So we were just like, okay, that's interesting. Like, why? What was happening? In fact, they committed a fraud in that previous company. And then the whole team was hired by new shareholders into this new business because they thought that they're great managers. They didn't do the homework or completely ignored it, or this team members were good enough to persuade that, oh, actually, we were not involved in what was happening in the previous company. So they were hired by a new company, and this new company was nearly destroyed by their actions. And again, I'm not speaking about some minor employee, like warehouse specialist. I'm speaking about CFO, CEO, etc., etc. What was it, if not negligence by the new owners? Because they didn't even, spend 5 minutes trying to Google what happened with the previous company, why this whole team is looking for a new job, why would I hire such people? And then the last thing that I will say, and it's probably a very intangible thing, but still, when you're hiring new people, speak to them and try to figure out if you feel comfortable to work with these people. Sometimes you feel that there is something fishy. You cannot even say what exactly is wrong. Nothing is wrong with their records. Nothing is obvious from whatever information you could find, but you feel that something is off. Trust your intuition, believe it or not.
Are you ready to protect your business from financial risk and fraud? My independent and global firm, TSENU Consulting, specializes in forensics, investigations, valuations, and litigation consulting. My mission is to help you identify and mitigate risks while maximizing your company's value. Whether you're a corporate executive, investor, or law firm, TSENU's expert approach provides rigorous, white-gloved deliverables tailored to your unique needs. With a strategic and global presence, TSENU Consulting is ready to become your trusted advisor. TSENU Consulting, where protecting value and preventing fraud is not just our business, it's our passion. Go to www.tsenu.global. More I interacted with most people from former FBI agents, and they're working in that field, and from the other side, not the consulting industry, but working for government organizations. And most of them, they said, number one, trust your intuition. If
Absolutely.
it's something fishy, that is fishy. And I have a very personal example. I hired the babysitter once for my son. Again, it was incredibly interesting. I actually got really great references. She was an incredible babysitter for just like doing her job, but she had that weakness of just taking money from just, you would put like $5, $20 in front of her. She cannot resist taking it behind your back. And when I offered her higher salary, higher basically remuneration, she actually said no. So it was not about like actual money. It's exactly the rush. Prior employer didn't mention that. I don't know if she was not caught and it didn't happen, but like when I tried a couple of times putting $5 between $20 and $1, that $5 always disappeared. So, but since the day one, I had that intuition. I just ignored it. And again, that personal situation can always happen in, my imaginary business. So
Absolutely. So yeah, just take your time, select the right people. That's my second advice, if you wish. And that brings us to the third one, which is also people related, but this is more about what we are normally doing. That's about internal controls. I'm sure sometimes when you come to a shop, you see like signs like smile, you've been recorded, or something like that. I want to say not necessarily you do have those cameras around you, but you would think twice before you steal something from the shelves. Even if you are tempted, even if you're, I don't know, hungry, or even if you are one of those who are like really prone to, misbehaving, you will think twice. The same approach should be done in business, especially if you're a small or medium-sized business who cannot afford like really complex and, deep thought through risk management tools. You should create the environment where people would think that they're being watched in a good way. You should trust your people. You should, work with them on a good relationships. You don't need to oppress them all the time and stress them out. But they need to be absolutely sure that misconduct and fraud is not tolerated in your company. And if it happens, they would be punished in this and that way by being fired or by any other. They need to understand that there will be some consequences.
And they will be caught. So like
and they will be caught.
The environment that they will be caught, as well as just that it's not even watching them. It's exactly as you said, it's not even 90% of that compliance with those internal controls. It's 100%. So the camera is there. They don't know if it's switched on or switched off, but the switched off camera syndrome, it's so good because the practice is established there. It's basically best practices, exactly as you said about the broken windows, right? Like situation. It's there, right? The environment encourages the other way around. You should not shoplifting, right? Because the camera is there. So if there's a lot of liquor here, you don't drink behind my back when there's nobody here and you're just alone at night. There is a camera. Just
totally. And then it should be communicated. So from the tone at the top, first of all, me as an owner and the general director, I never do that. So you can see me, you, my subordinates can see me. I never drink without in your shop. For example, I never drink like the liquor I didn't pay for. But also I'm telling you on regular basis through training or from regular or like even unofficial communication, that's not what I expect from you. I expect you to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Fraud is not like the thing that you should do. Weirdly, a lot of people think that it goes without saying. Believe it or not, no. Sometimes people don't even recognize that certain behavior is not the right one. I'll give you an example. In certain companies, there are sales managers. And it's a common practice to increase the sales numbers at the end of the quarter to receive big bonus. And then they say, we write it off. So actually, at the end of the year, the company sees the right numbers. Nobody is suffering. It's just like everyone is doing it here. Like we are increasing the numbers to receive that bonus. That's a common practice. Or another thing that I've heard, well, actually, in a certain market, we cannot do our business without bribes. It just won't work, they say. But the fact is, it's not true. Certain companies survive without it, and certain companies accept it as their market, situation. So you as a business owner set up the tone. You as a business owner says that this is what is acceptable. You as a business owner do the training, official or non-official. And you also make sure that people do understand what is the right way to behave and what is not the right way to behave. Both
So
through
Yulia, you mentioned the training. Can you just for 2 seconds mention what kind of training should I be doing as an owner? So is it something related to broader do not steal, or it's just much broader training? What is
Well,
that kind
again, it depends on your particular situation. You identify the main risks for yourself, and it can be a part of the bigger training. You can even say, like, okay, I'm training you, I don't know, training for waitresses. I'm training you to do certain things. This is what we do for our clients to be satisfied. This is what we don't do in any situations because it will be qualified as misconduct or fraud, for example. And this is what we do if you see other people doing that. And here is when we come to these internal control things.
of?
Apart from the fact that you are saying that it's important not to do certain things, you need to make sure that people have channels how to communicate to you safely, ideally, anonymously, how they communicate to you if they see cases of improper, behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So there should
To
be
me
some
or to someone who basically works with me, right? Like
exactly.
it's just the safe environment to communicate that, right? And I want to stress on that because again, just a little bit back from from the head of a business owner to forensic accountant, the feeling safe enough to communicate and to bring an issue, this is
Mhm.
just a very big concern for most of the employees, because if somebody like your friend, your other peer is stealing and you're kind of tempting between either to do the same, to drink that liquor, or just go to a business owner, right? You
Mhm.
kind of like really need to know what's the right thing, and it's really safe to communicate upwards, and
Mhm.
nobody will really know that that's you who are like kind of gossiping, right? It's not gossiping, it's just doing the
No,
right
it's
thing.
it's
Yeah.
what is called whistleblowing, and it's like an important thing now, because in the majority of cases, big cases of fraud, when it was revealed, it started with a whistleblower, because very often external audit does not reveal anything. On the surface of your financial statements, there is nothing happening. Even if you do a certain audit procedures, you cannot reveal a fraud. So what happens? Somebody who is next to you, an unhappy peer for whatever reason, or just a person from those good 10% who just cannot stand any misconduct, they report to the management or to the owners that something fishy is happening, something is wrong. So then you take an action. And then it's a very important thing as a business owner, you must take an action. Although this call or like, I don't know, communication might be anonymous, it should be very sound and reported back to all the people what exactly happened if something actually happened.
This is
That's
really interesting and important just to stress. So basically, if somebody just tells me, I don't know, every single night there's somebody comes in and drinks half the bottle of liquor, even if it does not happen, according to my own investigation, I have to report to everybody that,
I would say
right?
that
How would you do that?
if you
Yeah.
didn't reveal anything, you don't
Mhm,
have to say that. But
mhm,
if you revealed that something actually happened,
mhm,
you need to communicate to that, because it brings it to the attention of the rest of the team. Again, this is what we're talking about, the cameras watching you. And b, it gives the right report back to the person who reported. You actually say, I took your call or your message allegation seriously. I did 1 2 3, and this is the results of my communication, so thank you very much. Even if you don't actually know who this person was, this is the right way to communicate back that you are taking it seriously and it's not tolerated in your company. Let's put it
mhm.
this way. So yes,
So
one of
what's next? So what, number four, right? So we can potentially go into number four,
okay.
what is really important for me to know.
Yeah. Well, that's even more common sense, but still, prevent and detect. So
Mhm,
you do need to have certain audit procedures, internal audit procedures, let's put it this way, to
mhm,
reveal such cases. you need to have some analytical procedures which are aimed at revealing certain things. Let's say nobody whistleblowed you, like nobody told you about the allegations, but you still need to see how you can reveal potential fraud. Again, sit down with your accountant or external auditor. Better you have internal auditors, but I understand small business doesn't have them. Just use again your common sense.
I'm not that small, so let's consider like a mid-sized business. Like,
You need to have some management accounts, let's put it this way, where you see this month that was this consumption of alcohol in the bar, and this is the amount of the revenue you received to them. Next month, it was much bigger consumption of alcohol, but the revenue stayed the same. What happened? It might be sales. It might be like, I don't know, like New Year sale, or it might be something actually happening, or it might be somebody who is writing off the bottles but taking it home. So you need to see those, unusual fluctuations, if you wish. And sometimes it's a very easy analytical procedures. Like, again, identify your very valuable assets and then see the statistics, historical statistics, compare it with benchmark at your industry. Like, educate yourself about potential schemes that might be used and how they will be revealed. Like, what are the indicators?
To stress here, basically, it's just as simple as possible. And just, I like how you actually paused as number 4. It's like something really basic. The more basic and obvious it is, the more important it is in forensic accounting and fraud prevention. And again, like basic analytics, basic understanding that, what changed and the dynamic of the before and after, right? The projection, what you compared with the budget, what actually happened, and also to stress to have that mentality of that can potentially happen, right? So again,
back to the first point. No, totally. I just wanted to give 2 more like very easy examples about like why prevent and detect is very important and why it might not work. We had a case in a company, a big, again, international company, which had an established hotline. They even had a certain like third-party company they involved to develop it, to make sure that it works. So we, as a part of our procedures, came to a branch and asked them, like, do you have a hotline? And they said, yes, we do. Look at this, poster. Like, there is information about this hotline. We can always like call or email them and whistleblower, like report any allegations we've got. So what we did, we actually tried and tested. So the email we sent was completely ignored. Nothing returned to us. Nothing happened. Nothing actually reached to the headquarters. And the reason being, we wrote it in a local language. And the people who were sitting at the end of the hotline didn't understand that language. So they probably completely ignored it, I don't know, or decided that it's not important for some reason. So it's one thing. And another thing, we called the phone number and it was the wrong number.
How interesting. And again, to stress, this is very, very basic. We're not even speaking about touching any document or review or any number.
Yeah. It's something like
the number to call.
Use a business owner think that you actually established a good, safeguards and good internal controls. You got your hotline, which was designed by another company. But the fact is, it doesn't work. And to add a cherry on top of that cake, the majority of the people who were working in this particular branch didn't have laptops because they were warehouse people and there were some other people, etc., etc. So they, even if they would want to send an email, they wouldn't be able to because it was like 10 years ago. So people wouldn't have like smartphones or computers at home. So basically, 90% of that branch would not be able to report even if something was happening. So it's an example.
The system, right? The entire system, which has to be built in place, very simple, but actually actionable and working, right? That's what
it should work. Yeah. Establish the internal controls and test it somehow. It must work. If it doesn't work, then I'm sorry. You would not be able to detect or prevent anything. Another example I will give you, it was a bank, like mid-sized bank, not the biggest one, but quite a big one, established bank. So what they did, they were giving loans to people. And the people would come and then say, okay, we have a loan to give to a person, to do that amount above a certain amount of money, we need to have approval by our general manager because it's a significant amount to give. So the second person must, check everything and agree that we can give that big amount to this particular person. And we were sitting together with this bank employee and looking at the computer and the system, and then we're just like, okay, let's try to do it without the approval. And the person's like, no, you cannot do it. I'm just like, but there is a button. I can press the button, right? And the loan will be given. No, but we cannot do that. Yeah, you cannot do it because you're sitting next to the, auditor. But if somebody, let's imagine somebody who wants to give this loan, and there was a case when they were giving loans to non-existing people, basically stealing money from the bank. If I want to commit a fraud, will I be able to press it? What will happen? And they're just like, we don't know. We just know that we shouldn't do that. We pressed the button and the loan was given.
How interesting. Again, like it's just like very simple, but it does happen. It can happen.
But there is a right control there, which is called segregation of duties. So two people are involved in the decision making, but in fact, you can override it very easily. Nobody would see it. Nobody would see it. And since there is 100 of those loans, nobody would pay attention to that during the day or a week or even months. Let's put it this way.
So we're coming to probably the last point, right? Number 5, what it is that it's like the most important for me as a business owner to just pay attention to not deal with fraud later on.
And I would say that that's, again, very basic, but keep your accounting records clear and detailed enough. There are very many cases when we come and try to figure out what happened, and when we dig deeper on the transactional detail level, we cannot figure out what exactly happened, who approved that expense, what exactly the expense was about. And if we're speaking about coming back to a year ago or 2 years ago, sometimes it's practically impossible to look into that. I looked at their fraud where a person was charging a lot of personal expenses as a business expense. And then when you look at the record, it would say travel or tickets without any details, what type of tickets there were. And we couldn't figure out what it was. Like only analytically, we could check and see that the price that was charged there was significantly higher than an average economy ticket that this person should have been taken. So this is how we kind of tried and proved to the management again, or to the owners, that this person probably was charging too much, either abusing the system and buying a ticket of business class instead of buying economy, which he should have, or going there with the whole family. It was a very nice location where they were going. It could be like the tickets of 3 people charged to the business account. And again, it would be considered as fraud, of course. But
so it's basically taking a look at the details and like making sure that even if there's somebody like the accountant putting that through the system should not accept any documents without the details, right? That's not even the control. This is the procedure which should be established, and that should be just reinforced all the time.
Totally. So it should be a procedure. There should be, again, rules about clarity and level of details you need to put there. And let's say if you don't do that, it should be kind of considered as a red flag. So you should know that if you just put travel and there is no details where you went and why you went there and whether it was approved, that should be considered as a red flag, and you would be asked about it like as if it was something that you shouldn't do in this case. And the last but not the least thing, in this case scenario, I would say to the business owners, you should learn from other people's mistakes as well as your mistakes. So let's assume you did detect a fraud. Like, what should you do? You should figure out how in the future you can prevent similar frauds and establish an internal control which is aimed at that. And then again, as we said, test it, that it actually works. So it's not like just a hotline. It's actually a hotline which works, which can bring you the allegations. And then finally do perform the audit in some point of time and see like what results this or that internal control brings to you, and if it's effective or not.
So just to conclude, based on everything we discussed today, Yulia, would you like to summarize like number 1, number 2, number 3? I remembered simple things, basics, test the actual hotline, make sure that the basic psychology is addressed of potential fraudsters, establish the proper system, and then at the end, it's just analyze from the potential like analytical. I hate it like analyze analytical, but it's actually like analyze with all the available tools for business owners what happened during the last couple of months, and just make sure you include all the details and every single item. Hopefully everybody records, so very specific details.
No, I think you nailed it. But again, like just to go through that. First of all, recognize the risk of fraud and that it's actual and it's happening and you're prone to that as well. Second, hire the right people. Third, provide the right tone at the top. Make sure that everybody knows that it's not acceptable to commit fraud or do any other misconduct. 4, eliminate the opportunity for this good or like neutral 80%. Make sure that the cameras are watching. And then 5, keep the accounting records detailed and clear enough. So if in the worst case scenario something was happening, you can come back, analyze it, and learn from your own mistakes what you can do in the future to prevent such situations.
This is great. Thank you so much, Yulia. Just to stress, Yulia is a principal at TSENU Consulting. Was very lucky to work with Yulia during a certain amount of years. Yulia has global and local experience in preventing and detecting fraud, and including a few qualifications in detecting fraud as well, right? So, and hopefully we'll bring Yulia again soon.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe. Reviews are very helpful. If you'd like to get in touch with me, go to www.tsenu.global and book a call today.